Welcome to Maths with Jade. In this video tutorial, we'll be doing an introduction to trigonometry. Trigonometry is a fundamental part of mathematics, and it has an unbelievable amount of uses such as architecture, video games design, marine biology, space travel. It has even been used to solve crimes. So it is really important that you are familiar with the basics because you never know when you might need it. We can use trigonometry to find unknown angles and lengths in a right angle triangle, but first we need to label the triangle in a specific way. I really recommend writing this down. Here is our right angle, and we want to label one of the other angles. So if we label this one, we're going to call it theta, which is just a Greek letter we use to represent an angle. The longest side you should all be familiar with from Pythagoras' theorem. We call it the hypotenuse, H for short. And now the side opposite theta, that does not touch theta, we call simply the opposite, O for short. And then the remaining side between theta and the right angle we call the adjacent, and we abbreviate this to A. Right, hopefully that has sunk in. Want to have a go? Correctly label these three triangles with O, A and H. Pause the video now. Here's what you should have got. Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a very clever mathematician, and he would spend his days doing many calculations trying to find unknown angles and lengths in a triangle. One day he made the discovery that there is a pattern when we divide one side of a right angle triangle with another side. Now I won't bore you with the ins and outs and all the details of this extraordinary discovery. I'll just tell you what you need to know, and we call them the trig ratios. You need to learn them by memory, so you might want to take a deep breath. Sine of theta is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Cos of theta is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And tan of theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. Now this isn't a foreign language, although you can just remember that sine, cos and tan are complicated operations. My teacher once told me that a nice way to remember these trig ratios is to say the following sentence: some old hens can always hide their old age. And taking the first letter from each of these words in this sentence spells out so, ka, toa. A nice easy way to remember the trig ratios. Luckily, we don't need to look up these trig ratios for each angle in books anymore or work them out manually. We can use our calculators. And your buttons for sine, cos and tan can be located right here. Thank heavens. Now let's look at solving a problem using these trig ratios. I recommend having them written down on your page somewhere. So we have this triangle and we want to find x. First we need to identify what trig ratio to use. And to do that I'm going to label my sides. And I have h, which leaves me with sine and cos. But I want to find the opposite, O, which means I have to use sine. So I'm going to write that out in full and then substitute in the values that I have on my triangle, which leaves me with sine of 30 is equal to my opposite, x, over my hypotenuse, 8. I want to get x on its own on one side, so I'm going to multiply by that denominator 8. And by doing this, the 8's are going to cancel out on the right-hand side, leaving me with x. And now I just need to find what is 8 times sine 30 by simplifying that. You can do this in two ways. You can simplify sine 30 in your calculator and find that it's a half, or you can just put 8 times sine 30 into your calculator in one go. Whichever way you do it, x will be equal to 4. And don't forget those units. Your turn, find the missing lengths on the following right angle triangles. Now a word of advice, always choose the correct ratio. Pause the video here. Now it's time to see how you got on with that. I've included the final step in each of the answers so you can see where you went wrong if you went wrong. So for A, you should have got 8.92 meters. For B, you should have got 15.0 centimeters. And for C, 14.3 kilometers. I've rounded my answers to 3 significant figures. Let's take a look at a different example. So I have a right angle triangle. I know a different angle is 68 degrees, a side is 5 meters, and I want to find x. I need to identify what ratio to use. So I'm going to label the sides that I know. I've got O, and I need to find A. So I look through my ratios, and tan has O and it has A. It's the only one that has both, so I will use tan. Now I need to substitute in my values, and I get tan of 68 is equal to 5 over x. My unknown is on the bottom now, which makes it different from our last example. I'm still going to multiply by the denominator, and that will give me x times tan 68. And then the x's on the right hand side will cancel out, and I'm left with 5. So now I'm going to divide both sides by the trig function. That will mean that on the right hand side I'll have 5 divided by tan 68, but my tans on my left hand side will cancel out, leaving me with x on its own. Fantastic. Now you can simplify, and you have found your value of x, 2.02 meters. Do not forget the units. There is a little shortcut some of you might want to use. Skip from the substitute stage to the final stage by swapping the trig function with the denominator. Now it's your turn. Find the missing lengths on these 3 right angle triangles. Pause the video now. Here's your last step and solution for each question. Check your answers. Well done if you got all of those. Now it's time for our final example. We have a right angle triangle. We know one of the sides is 30 kilometers and that the longest side is 42 kilometers, but we don't know theta. So to find theta, we need to first identify what ratio to use. I have my adjacent and I have the hypotenuse. So I look through my trig ratios, and the only one that includes both of those is cos. So I'll be using cos. Now I can substitute in the values that I know. I have cos of theta is equal to 30 over 42. And now I need to get cos to the other side, because the theta I need on its own. So I'm going to inverse the trig function. Yes, you heard me right, although this is not an abstract concept and you will be quite used to doing this. For example, the inverse of dividing by 3 would be multiplying by 3, and the inverse of adding 10 would be subtracting 10. Well, our trig functions also have inverses, and luckily our calculator comes to the rescue again. We just need to press shift and then the correct button of the trig function we want to inverse. Well, in this case, it would be cos. And it looks like this, cos to the -1. And then we have theta on its own. Our calculator will simplify it straight away, and we get theta is equal to 44.4 degrees. Your turn, find the missing angles. Pause the video here. Let's see how you did. Here are your solutions along with the final steps so you can see where you went wrong if you went wrong. Thank you for watching. This has been an introduction to trigonometry and maths with Jade. If you liked this video, please do hit the like button. Also subscribe to this channel and keep up to date with other trigonometry videos that I will be releasing. Share this video and all comments are welcome. Have a lovely day.